Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM Today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Monday, 26th, May 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. Israel, Palestine. 1. The region remains volatile, with ongoing conflict and political developments impacting both Israelis and Palestinians. The Irish government is set to introduce legislation to prohibit imports from occupied Palestinian territories, specifically targeting goods like olives, oranges, and dates originating from Israeli settlements. In Gaza, Israeli military actions continue, with a recent strike on the Fahmy al-Jawi school, which was being used as a shelter, reportedly killing dozens. Medics reported that Israeli strikes killed 52 in Gaza, including 36 at the school-turned-shelter. An additional Israeli airstrike resulted in the deaths of at least 7 children of Dr. Hamdi al-Nashar, who was injured and treated at Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. Local health authorities have reported that Israeli military strikes killed at least 30 Palestinians across the Gaza Strip on Sunday, including a senior rescue service official and a journalist. The United Nations FAO reports that over 95% of Gaza's agricultural land is now unusable due to Israeli attacks on land, wells, and greenhouses, exacerbating the risk of famine. Further fueling tensions, right-wing Israelis marched through Palestinian areas on Jerusalem Day, chanting anti-Arab slogans. Jake Wood resigned from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, citing the difficulty of maintaining neutrality and independence while implementing a new Israeli-backed aid system in the enclave. United States. A dual U.S.-German citizen was arrested for allegedly traveling to Israel and attempting to firebomb the U.S. Embassy branch office in Tel Aviv. Additionally, Yarm Lashinsky, a 30-year-old Israeli citizen, was buried in Beit Zayit, Israel, after being fatally shot in Washington. Japan is navigating tariff negotiations with the United States, with Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba offering support for the U.S. shipbuilding industry as part of the agreement. Ishiba showcased Japan's shipbuilding prowess by inspecting Maritime Self-Defense Force, MSDF, vessels to strengthen Japan's negotiating position. Fears exist that U.S. tariffs could push Japan into a technical recession before the upper house election. To combat escalating rice prices, Japan has begun selling government rice reserves via direct contracts, a move promised by the new farm minister to bring costs down. About 60% of Japanese citizens are optimistic that the new minister will succeed in lowering rice prices, particularly after the previous minister was dismissed for a controversial remark. Japan's leading life insurers are grappling with $60 billion in unrealized bond losses, reflecting the financial vulnerabilities they face as interest rates climb. The drugstore industry is seeing consolidation as Tsuruha, located in Sapporo, is scheduled to merge with Welcia, the nation's largest drugstore chain, in December. In remembrance, the remains of 368 Japanese war dead were interred in the Chidorigafuchi National Cemetery, raising the total to 371,008, including those who died after the war as detainees in Siberia. Holiday bookings to Japan have decreased, potentially due to predictions of a major disaster on July 5, 2025, as depicted in the manga The Future I Saw by Ryo Tatsuki. Russia initiated a large-scale drone assault on Ukraine, causing at least 6 deaths and widespread damage. Ukraine's Air Force documented nearly 370 missiles and drones involved in the attack, with the total death toll reaching at least 12. The strikes ignited fires in areas like Makhalivka, close to Kyiv, where emergency responders worked to control the blazes. Following the attack, Russia and Ukraine conducted a prisoner exchange. Former US President Donald Trump criticized Vladimir Putin's actions in Ukraine, saying Putin has gone absolutely crazy and is needlessly killing a lot of people, further predicting that Putin's ambition to conquer Ukraine would precipitate Russia's downfall. Adding to the internal dynamics, some Russian soldiers who served in drone units, including those led by members of parliament, have returned to civilian life and received promotions as war veterans, while most soldiers are facing indefinite deployments. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has condemned Israel's blockade of aid to Gaza as unacceptable. He refuted the Netanyahu government's reasons for impeding food and medical supplies. Meanwhile, an Australian state government is planning to ban machete sales after a violent gang fight at a shopping centre. Disaster Relief Australia, led by veterans, seeks federal funding to establish a 10,000-member volunteer force for disaster recovery. DRA positions itself as an alternative to the Australian Defence Force, ADF. Experts also believe Australian women underutilise youths due to inadequate public education on their effectiveness. In Bali, an Australian man from Sydney, aged 43, is facing potential capital punishment or life imprisonment for allegedly smuggling 1.7 kilo of cocaine. United States. In the United States, Jake Wood has resigned as the head of the U.S.-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. He cited the organization's failure to maintain humanitarian principles in Gaza aid operations. The U.S. military is also altering its communication approach in Africa, advising allies to prepare for self-sufficiency. European Union. Turning to the European Union, former U.S. President Donald Trump has put a stop to the planned 50% tariffs on the EU after a discussion with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. France is positioning itself as a reliable partner for Vietnam as President Emmanuel Macron visited Hanoi and emphasized a law-based global order amid U.S. trade concerns and tensions with China. A video has emerged showing France's First Lady seemingly pushing President Macron's face prior to their Southeast Asia tour. Domestically, regulations in sports like basketball are under scrutiny for preventing Muslim women from competing due to bans on religious attire. Southern France recently dealt with 2 major power outages suspected to be arson, affecting Nice and the Cannes Film Festival. During Macron's Vietnam visit, France and Vietnam also finalized Airbus deals. India is currently bolstering diplomatic ties with several nations. Guyana has pledged its support for India's counter-terrorism efforts. Simultaneously, India and the Maldives are planning a review of their economic and maritime security cooperation. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar will meet Abdullah Khalil, the Maldivian foreign minister, aiming to solidify relations after past difficulties. Following a recent attack in Kashmir, India has initiated a strong diplomatic response. Weather-wise, a red alert is in effect for Mumbai and surrounding areas due to severe rainfall affecting coastal communities. Furthermore, reconciliation efforts are in progress to improve relations between India and Canada following tensions during the Trudeau administration. Ukraine faced a record drone attack on Kyiv as Russia escalates its military actions. The increased assault occurs during a period of reduced U.S. involvement and stalled diplomatic initiatives. Ukraine's intelligence chief alleged Chinese assistance to Russia's arms industry. NATO, under Secretary General Mark Rutte, is preparing for a summit focused on setting new spending targets. Potential disagreements regarding Ukraine, especially involving figures such as Trump and Zelensky, could overshadow the summit's agenda. The United Kingdom is witnessing a trend of companies rebranding their diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) programs. This rebranding is an attempt to avoid negative political attention amidst a rising right-wing backlash. In the United States, a similar trend is occurring, with companies rebranding DEI programs to sidestep political criticism. Simultaneously, The US is reducing its diplomatic engagement concerning Ukraine as Russia increases its attacks, and Trump appears to be disengaging from the process. France's President Macron believes that Trump now understands Putin's deceptive actions concerning Ukraine. Macron hopes this realization will encourage Trump to take action. Russia is intensifying its attacks on Ukraine, creating a dangerous situation for Kyiv. Ukrainian intelligence accuses China of directly supporting Russia's arms industry. President Macron suggests that Trump now recognizes Putin's deception regarding Ukraine. China is preparing to host Pacific foreign ministers in Xiamen for an in-person summit, signaling renewed diplomatic effort. The return of Alibaba's Jack Ma into the public eye suggests China's desire to guide tech entrepreneurs toward alignment with national priorities. Disinformation campaigns, including false narratives and bot-driven activities, are increasingly impacting U.S.-China trade relations. In the United States, President Trump's actions and pronouncements have spurred speculation about a potential global order. This order could feature the United States, China, and Russia as dominant powers within their own defined spheres of influence. Iran saw the return of filmmaker Jafar Panahi to Tehran after he won the Palme d'Or at Cannes for It Was Just an Accident, despite previously being banned from leaving the country. Shifting focus to nuclear matters, Iran maintains its stance on enriching uranium for its civilian program, refusing to halt the process as a prerequisite for a nuclear agreement with the United States. The ongoing negotiations, which include a sixth round mediated by Oman, continue. President Donald Trump has alluded to possible positive outcomes from these discussions, hinting at an upcoming announcement. Venezuela's ruling coalition achieved a major win in parliamentary and regional elections, though the opposition boycotted the process. The elections for lawmakers and governors took place amid rising government repression, leading to the opposition's boycott call. President Nicolas Maduro has pushed for the election of a governor for Essequibo, a region belonging to Guyana. Thousands of Venezuelan migrants are allegedly risking their lives in attempts to self-deport. Neighboring Guyana faces escalating tensions as Venezuela's President Maduro continues to assert claims over the Essequibo region. This territorial dispute has fueled concerns about potential conflict and regional stability. The Guyanese government is seeking international support to defend its sovereign territory. Bangladesh is currently grappling with civil unrest as protests erupt within the civil administration over the interim government's policies. Adding to the tension, prominent businessman Showkat Aziz Russell has raised alarms, comparing the killings of business figures to the 1971 Liberation War's intellectual purges. He further warned of a possible famine due to escalating unemployment. Spain is preparing for soaring temperatures in the southern regions, with forecasts predicting highs of 40 degrees C, significantly above the typical seasonal average. Simultaneously, the town of Alba de Tormes in western Spain is experiencing a surge in religious tourism as tens of thousands of Catholic pilgrims gather to venerate the relics of Saint Teresa of Avila, a prominent figure in 16th century religious reform. Pakistan is currently seeing Prime Minister Sharif embark on a diplomatic tour across Turkey, Iran, Azerbaijan, and Tajikistan to bolster ties. In Turkey, Sharif and Turkish leaders reinforced the strategic alliance between the two nations. In other news, devastating storms and intense rainfall in Punjab, Pakistan, have tragically caused the deaths of at least 20 people. King Charles III's visit to Canada, at the invitation of Prime Minister Mark Carney, is scheduled to open Parliament and deliver the speech from the throne, which will outline the government's agenda. This visit is perceived as reinforcing Canadian sovereignty, particularly amid tensions with the United States and former President Trump's suggestions of a possible U.S. annexation. Prime Minister Carney has highlighted King Charles's role in safeguarding Canadian sovereignty. The visit also carries significance for Indigenous leaders, who see it as a reflection of the historical relationship between the monarchy and Canada's First Peoples. North Korea has detained 4 officials, including 3 shipyard executives, after a naval destroyer launch failed at Chongjin Port. The 5,000-ton class ship, Pyongyang's second such destroyer, sustained damage during the ceremony, prompting Kim Jong-un to condemn the incident as a criminal act. Shifting focus to South Korea, the leading candidate in the upcoming June 30 presidential election is advocating for a more moderate stance toward North Korea than that of the previous administration, suggesting a possible change in inter-Korean dynamics. Taiwan is navigating a delicate geopolitical situation, with Governor Leung Guerrero of Guam recently visiting amidst rising concerns about Chinese military activity. Defense Chief Wellington Koo affirmed his belief that the U.S. shares Taiwan's security interests. The island is also actively preparing for asymmetric warfare possibilities. A referendum is scheduled for August 23 regarding the possible reactivation of the Mainchan nuclear power plant, pending safety confirmations. In education news, Taiwan's ministry is addressing the anticipated impact of a U.S. government enrollment block, affecting 52 Taiwanese students. French President Emmanuel Macron is prioritizing stronger trade ties and defense cooperation with Vietnam. Macron addressed a viral video falsely portraying him being pushed, labeling it disinformation from crazy people. Vietnam continues to navigate its relationships with major powers like the US, EU, China, and Russia. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz is participating in a Nordic summit in Turku, Finland. The Green Party in Germany is dissenting against revisions that would end the expedited path to citizenship. In Wolfsburg, 4 ex-Volkswagen managers received convictions in an emissions trial tied to the emissions cheating scandal, which has cost the company over $30 billion. In the United States, a person holding dual U.S. and German citizenship is accused of trying to firebomb the U.S. Embassy branch in Tel Aviv. Bari, Italy, has successfully transformed its image, attracting tourists to its revitalized old town after tackling organized crime. This positive change is boosted by new direct flights from the U.S., enhancing accessibility and tourism. The United States delayed implementing 50% tariffs on the European Union until July 9. This postponement followed a call between President Trump and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. The delay allows for fresh negotiations between the two entities. Syria finds itself at the center of shifting geopolitical dynamics, as President Trump's evolving stance toward its leader complicates Israel's established military strategies, resulting in a noticeable decrease in Israeli airstrikes within Syrian territory. Turning to Germany, a remarkable story of courage has emerged. Mohammed al-Mohammed, a 19-year-old Syrian refugee, is being celebrated for his heroic intervention during a knife attack at Hamburg's Central Railway Station, where he helped to subdue the assailant. Across the European Union, consumer advocates are pushing for intervention regarding budget airlines' hand baggage policies. Ryanair and EasyJet are specifically targeted. The advocates claim the airlines are unfairly charging for carry-on luggage. They also assert the airlines are ignoring established regulations on baggage allowances. Sweden's Volvo Cars is set to cut 3,000 jobs amid rising trade tensions and economic uncertainties affecting the automotive industry. Meanwhile, a Swedish government project to define Swedish culture, potentially featuring ABBA, saunas, and Strindberg's plays, is sparking lively debate among artists. Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has reached out to former US President Donald Trump. He seeks a US-ASEAN meeting focused on trade and tariff concerns. Meanwhile, Mohammed Hassan, decried the atrocities against Palestinians. He attributed them to global indifference and double standards. South Korea is facing a lawsuit from a mother who claims she was unjustly separated from her young son. The suit targets both the South Korean government and an associated agency. The core of the issue revolves around the child's relocation to Norway. Turning to Norway, legal proceedings are underway against a cargo ship, Navigator. The Navigator is accused of negligence, specifically falling asleep while on duty. This alleged lapse resulted in the ship running aground, narrowly avoiding a collision with a residential property. The ship's origin lies outside of Norway, adding an international dimension to the case. Romania saw Nikuza Dan sworn in as president. This event tentatively ends a political crisis. The crisis arose after the annulment of the previous election. Dan's victory occurred amidst claims of a stolen election. These claims originated from far-right factions. Austria witnessed the acquittal of former Chancellor Sebastian Kurz, who had previously faced perjury charges. The Austrian court overturned his conviction for making false statements to a parliamentary inquiry. The inquiry focused on alleged corruption within his government. Turning to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government is facing increasing pressure to address rising housing costs. New policies are being considered to cool the market and increase affordability for first-time buyers. The measures could include stricter regulations on foreign investment and increased incentives for new construction. Across the Atlantic, France is grappling with ongoing protests and strikes over pension reforms. President Emmanuel Macron's decision to raise the retirement age has sparked widespread discontent. Negotiations between the government and unions have so far failed to reach a compromise. Meanwhile, in Germany, the government announced a new package of measures to support the transition to renewable energy. The plan includes investments in wind and solar power, as well as the development of a hydrogen economy. Germany aims to become carbon neutral by 2045. United States trade relations with the European Union saw a reprieve as President Trump postponed the implementation of planned tariffs on EU goods. Shifting focus to Mexico, Chisato Iwai clinched her inaugural LPGA victory at the Mexico Riviera Maya Open, dominating the competition with a commanding 6-shot lead. Beyond sports, Mexico City continues to be celebrated for its rich tapestry of artistic expression, spanning numerous historical periods. Azerbaijan's hopes for a new regional framework are clouded by the unresolved peace agreement with Armenia. Moving to Burundi, Congolese refugees face a dire situation within overcrowded camps, marked by starvation and violence, further worsened by aid cuts and diminishing security. Shifting focus to East Africa, democracy is on the decline, with legislatures proving ineffective and elections lacking genuine substance, highlighting the urgent need for grassroots activism. In Fiji, Deputy Prime Minister Biman Prasad has conceded that the nation cannot compete with Australian and New Zealand teacher salaries. The government is instead focusing on implementing other measures to retain educators amidst a growing staffing crisis. Meanwhile, Greece has completed a €1 billion undersea power cable linking the mainland to Crete, a significant infrastructure achievement in the Mediterranean region. Indonesian police have taken an Australian man into custody, suspected of smuggling cocaine into Bali, a crime that could carry the death penalty. Turning to Lebanon, Mahmoud Abbas and Joseph Aoun have jointly demanded that Palestinian groups in the country disarm, ending a decades-long practice. In New Zealand, Resources Minister Shane Jones is determined to double mineral exports to $3 billion within 10 years. He has dismissed environmental concerns, prioritizing economic growth and reduced reliance on imports. Palau is preparing to host a delegation of 130 athletes and officials from the Vanuatu Association of Sports and National Olympic Committee for the Palau Mini Games, pending state funding approval. Panama is set to receive a delegation led by Shashi Tharoor on May 27th. The delegation will engage with Panamanian leaders, media, the strategic community, and the Indian community. In Papua New Guinea, the manager of Madalang Hospital in Madang has warned of its impending collapse, citing mismanagement, inadequate funding, and unsafe conditions. Poland saw tens of thousands participate in rival rallies in Warsaw, organized by the two presidential candidates before the upcoming runoff election in June. Qatar is under scrutiny as Human Rights Watch has accused the nation of discriminating against the Baha'i minority. Police in the Solomon Islands are actively searching for a suspect in a rape and murder case in the North Guadalcanal region. Tonga's Maka'alahi boulder, dislodged from a cliff edge, required a 50-meter wave lasting 90 seconds, according to research. Uganda is facing criticism from Human Rights Watch for targeting the LGBTQ community with hatred and violence, stemming from the 2023 law imposing severe penalties for homosexual acts. The United States and the European Union saw U.S. futures rise after President Trump postponed imposing steep tariffs on the EU until July 25. This decision followed discussions with EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen, suggesting a renewed focus on trade negotiation. However, Trump's tariffs and tax policies may still hinder the growth of the U.S. battery industry, which relies on Chinese components and federal subsidies. Lastly, in Yemen, a suspected U.S. airstrike in Sana'a has reportedly resulted in at least 11 deaths and the destruction of 4 homes, raising fears of a potential famine due to ongoing conflict. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.